Adam will be on later, but definitely check it out. It is worth your while. It's great. And we want you to be a part of our community. I think that's it. Ashton will start our little intro video, and then we'll get started.
All right, here we go.
Darkness closing, just stay focused. I'm not folding, I'll upset you, cause I'm just too dangerous. I'm dangerous. Let's be honest, this ain't no contest. Take those comments and form my concept from the get-go. I just get so dangerous, so dangerous. Yeah, two equal sides don't equal ties. Yo,
Welcome to week number 8 of Women in Sports. I'm Ashton Pills. Aaron? You're muted.
Amateur move. We're week 8 and I still can't figure it out. Just kidding. And I'm Erin. We're so glad to have you guys here. Can't believe it's already week 8.
No, this is really, really good. This week we have 2 amazing guests, Kara Hess from Women Leaders in Sports and Coach Sam Quigley, who is the head coach at Lewis University. Thanks for taking some time to be with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yep.
Of course, of course. Before we get into our questions and our intros, just want to reiterate, the narrative that we're trying to raise is women in sports. The past 8 weeks, we've got to have a lot of different coaches, administrators, and it's been really good to see and hear all the different insights and perspectives. So we're trying to continue to grow that. So we're really excited. But if you guys just want to go ahead and share with us, where you started, kind of where you got to where you are, we'd love to hear it.
Coach, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sam Quigley Smith, I need to say so that my husband doesn't overhear me incorrectly. But I started coaching, I think, a little bit different route maybe than most college coaches. I played at DePaul University in Chicago in the Big East when it was the real Big East with UConns and Notre Dames and all the great programs I think that the Big East was at that time. Our coach used to call it the beast of the Big East, and it certainly was. So after that, I actually was there for 5 years. I tore my ACL one season. That really was the year I decided that I wanted to be a coach. And I tried the overseas thing for a little while. I was in the country of Hungary, not too long. I was homesick, just wasn't for me. So I ended up coming home and became an assistant coach at an NAIA program, actually right down the street from where our family grew up. It's also the place that my late father, my mother, my youngest brother, my husband all attended school. So it was a pretty cool family connection and atmosphere that we had. Over the summers, we were always shooting around at this gym. My sister and I also played with my sister Allie at DePaul University. She's now a professional basketball player, has been playing for, I think this is her 12th season. So was the assistant coach at the University of St. Francis, an NAIA program, for one season. And then they actually had an interim coach that year. And it was kind of a funny story. They had lost their coaches right before the season started. They decided to hire their baseball coach. Their baseball coach had coached women's basketball at Lewis University, where I'm at right now, in the late 90s. So he had had some women's basketball coaching experience. He was also, still is, my uncle. So I was an assistant coach under my uncle for my first season of coaching, and was a great, great experience for me. The next June, the position opened up, I applied, and then became the head coach. So I didn't have a ton of experience coming out of college. It was just like, hey, you're a head coach. And so I was the head coach for 6 seasons at the University of St. Francis. We had some great success. It was a true rebuild of a program. I think prior to me starting there, we were 10-23. Our final season, we went to the NAIA Final Four. So it was like a true from the bottom to the top type rebuild, which was amazing. Great experience, great people. And Lewis was very similar from a culture standpoint and person, people, administration standpoint. So it just seemed like the right move for us from a family aspect. It was about 15 minutes down the street. And our uncle used to coach women's basketball at Lewis. So over the summers, we were always going to Lewis's basketball camps. So walking up to that campus felt like home as well. So two very family connected places that I've been at Lewis now, going to be starting my 4th season. Our staff is, and have had some great success, 3 straight NCAA tournaments so far, and hoping to win a national championship someday. My husband and I have 4 kids. We have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. I'm trying to remember all their ages. And 2 dogs. So we have a full packed house.
A lot of people there. Did you play for Bruno?
I did. Yep. I played for Doug. Yeah.
He's incredible.
He sure is.
Oh yeah. I'm Kara Hess, a manager of leadership and education at the Women Leaders in College Sports. My career path, obviously I'm not a coach, so a little bit of a different perspective here. And like I said, wish I was in a t-shirt right now, but I had programming all day today, and that's kind of what I do. But I was a former Division II athlete, 2 sports, volleyball and basketball. And my entire career, I kind of knew that I wanted to get into athletics, thought I wanted to be the first Aaron, like the next Aaron Andrews. Got in front of the camera and I was like, nope, I don't want to do this. So after college, I applied for this internship in Atlanta. So I lived in Michigan my whole life, and applied for this internship at the WBCA, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Women's Basketball Coaches Association. And I moved to Atlanta it was a 6-month internship, packed up everything, went to Atlanta, and I made like nothing, like $900 a month. And living in Atlanta, that y'all know that does not work. So lived there for 6 months. And on the last day of my internship, my parents were already on their way to come pick me up. And on the last day of the internship, the CEO or deputy director, Daniel Donahue, offered me a job. Didn't know the title, didn't know what it would be, didn't know anything. And I took it because I trusted her and I thought she was incredible. So I then spent the next 4 years at the WBCA, worked there, absolutely loved it, developed coaches. I was in education there and events. So helped at the Final Four. I'm sure a few of you have been to the Women's Final Four and the WBCA convention. So was in charge of putting together all the programming, the roundtables, the coaches huddles, anything programmatic I was in charge of there. But I always knew that I wanted to get into administration. So after 4 years there, I saw a position opening in Kansas City, where I'm at right now, Women Leaders in College Sports, and I jumped on it. And one of the cool thing is I got my job because of my connection with Patty from the Final Four. So I'd always see Patty, who's the CEO, and be like, hey, like, do you need anything? What's going on? Because I knew that at some point in my career, I was like, I need to know this woman. And so I kind of took a leap and moved to Kansas City about 2 years ago. And now at Women Leaders in College Sports, we develop, advance, and connect women in college athletics. So it's kind of cool that there's a lot of young coaches on here, but we're more the administration side. So we help our athletic directors, our SWAs. We have a lot of athletic trainers, and we help them advance through programming. So I just got done with an event today. It was a 4-day virtual programming that's normally in person. And there's about 90 women that were on it. And we bring in athletic directors, we bring in executive coaches, and we talk about advancement. So managing up, where we talk about building relationships, all these different types of topics to help people advance. So like I said, all of you that are trying to advance in your careers, that's what we do. So would more than willing be interested you can always reach out to me, but I love it. I am in a really cool downtown apartment in Kansas City. If you've never been to Kansas City, you got to come. It's a really cool city, but so far I'm enjoying my career.
So Kara, is this like agent-like?
It's exactly like the WBCA, but for the administrators. So but we more help, we're a lot more involved with like search committees and whatnot, because we're helping people advance. For So Sandy Barber is our incoming president of the AD at Penn State. So it's those type of women that we help in their career.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's super cool. You guys, I feel like I literally just texted Ashton. I was like, I don't think they need us. Like they can just go on and go on without us. It's so great. But just kind of, Kara, if you want to just hit on, obviously you're not in a coaching role, but you do run programs the same as, Coach Quigley does. She runs her own program and it's just different. How have you been able to use like your previous athletic experience being a double sport athlete in volleyball and basketball to really kind of find that that niche market for you to then now be doing the job that you're doing?
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. Every job I've had up until this point, I never knew existed, probably a year before. So when I played basketball my whole life and I didn't even know what the WBCA was. So when I applied, I was like, what am I doing? Where am I going? I'm going to Atlanta. What's happening? And so my connections, to be honest, a lot of times in the roles that I've been in, a lot of these people are like Division I athletes. And so I feel very blessed that I was a Division II athlete that has been able to get these positions. And it's been incredible. But I would truly say for anyone on this call is I thought I knew what I wanted to be. And so college athletics helped me get to that. But there's so many things out there that you don't probably even know exist. And so that's kind of the loophole I've fallen into is I thought athletics was just coaching. And I was like, I'm going to be a coach. And then I got into my internship and I'm like, whoa, this is not what I want to be. And then I've just been I've met some incredible people along the way. And you all know this, it's who you know. We always say at Women Leaders, it's not who you know, it's who will go to bat for you. And that's what's happened in my career is I've just met some great people. And I wouldn't have my job now if I wouldn't have met Patty at the Women's Final Four. And I'm sure my next job will be the exact same. So college athletics, I owe so much to, but I would really say it's my internship that propelled me in my career.
Coach Quigley, could you kind of speak on, obviously Kara did a lot with the WBCA, but you also just recently took a position, as the board of directors with the WBCA. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been, I think, a little bit unique, probably different with the COVID and everything that's been happening with the pandemic, but a lot of it has just been like problem solving and figuring out, what is going to be the WBCA stance, in terms of recruiting, in terms of playing seasons, in terms of what's safe and what's not. And so it's just been a lot of, I think, a different way to communicate, which is like a Zoom call like this, or, a conference call where we're all just trying to like give great input. Surveys. I don't know how many surveys I've done like this past spring and summer, just like trying to give people data to figure out, I think, the best route for the WBCA to go. And obviously their stance and the statements that they've come out with, I think, align for the most part with the NABC, which is the men's side in terms of a basketball coaches association. So a lot of, I think, the director, board of directors, the positions are something that you really look forward to when it comes to like the Final Four and getting to meet everybody in person and, again, go through these meetings and give great input when it comes to like decision making for the administrators for the WBCA. And so we didn't really get that portion of it yet, but that's something I hope to do obviously this next year, and being involved as much as I can. Whether it's a committee, I know that they're like always looking for people to like get on committees or the mentor program. They want as much involvement as possible, even if it's, extra membership. So, I think that it's been a little bit different probably than normally the board of directors would work, but all around a good experience, and one that I think so many of us, especially now, like in the Zoom world, you maybe wouldn't have talked as much in person. But now that you're on a Zoom call, now you're saying so much more, whether that's our own teams, you'd probably allow your assistants to talk more or the team to speak more, but it's a lot of, I'm sure some of you coaches on here know what it's like on the Zoom call when you ask a question and everybody stares at you on the Zoom call and there's no response, so the not in-person interaction has been tough, but I think it's been a learning experience for all of us. So
Coach, I learned the whole 7-second pause thing. So you ask a question, you just wait for 7 seconds. And then if no one answers, then you're screwed.
Then you answer it for them.
Yeah. And you're like, okay.
That's a good, 7 seconds. I've heard of it, but I think it's like, I'm so awkward sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could ever bear waiting 7 seconds.
Right. Do they think I'm paused?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Or muted. I don't know how I keep doing that, but, just kind of like a question that can, both of you can hit on, but kind of what are some ways that you're really helping prepare women for a successful career, whether that's in the sports industry, or just in life in general. Kara, if you want to kind of just hit on that.
Yeah, I can start. Like I said, we are just really trying to, I think for a lot of women, it's just having the confidence, right? And someone telling them, hey, you got this. And that's really, sometimes I feel like we just got to be someone's biggest cheerleader. The 90 Women, the program that we just had, is one of our most, signature programs. And these 90 women are, for the last 4 days, we're having people tell them like, hey, you can do this, because women feel like they can't because of families or because they feel like they're not good enough, or a male might get the position. And I'm not sitting here saying men should not get the positions, because I've had some amazing male coaches. But we're just really trying to help these women understand what they have and just actually use what they have, right? So yeah, we're giving them the tools. Yeah, we're talking about different topics. And yeah, we're talking about all of these different, we're specifically talking about topics, but it really doesn't matter. It's just getting a group of like-minded women in the room and then telling them, hey, go do it. So I wish there was truly, if everyone just listened to that and be like, hey, you have the confidence, I feel like there would be a lot more women in college athletics. What do you have to add to that, Coach?
Yeah, I would. That's really hard to follow. Thanks, Kara. But I think from a team and a coaching standpoint, I think so often people think of basketball coaches, and I bet a lot of you basketball coaches can probably agree with me. A lot of people ask like, is that all you do? Or are you full-time? Do you get paid for that? And I'm like, yes, I'm full-time, So I think so much of this too has become just like a mentorship and a leadership, program. It's not just about basketball and X's and O's. Like if that were the case, we wouldn't have any interaction with our team. It would be like, show up to practice and then show up to the game and make sure you're on time. And then that's that. But I think a lot of this is relationship building, when players come in. It's so funny, Erin, that this is a question that's being asked, because, one thing that I changed about our program in the last 5 to 6 years is like we started to develop them, from a mentorship standpoint, leadership standpoint, professional development. So like we have all of these different days that we have throughout the year that are non-practice days. So we call them iFly days. And so it's some sort of other topic that we address that's not basketballs or X's and O's related. So whether that be team building, whether that be professional development, or mock interviews, resume building, so we do all of these things as a program as well. And the reason I'm bringing this up, Erin, is because a few years ago, I coached a woman that was a Chicago Hoops Express girl who transferred from Western Illinois, Charnel Reed. She's now an assistant coach at Purdue Northwest. So Charnel became my graduate assistant at Lewis University, and her and I both talked about how it's not that we didn't feel prepared coming out of college, but we just didn't have thank goodness I wanted to be a basketball coach, because all of my experiences over the summertime from an internship standpoint, from anything related to my profession was basketball related. I only worked camps. I only, did anything basketball related. I coached a high school team over the summer. So I think so often our girls are not thinking about the summertime as a time to build your resume and to get yourself prepared for life after Lewis, So I think that's been a big point of focus for us, for them to be thinking about, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be in 4 years? I want to be a nurse. I want to be a physical therapist. I want to be a athletic trainer. It's like, well, you're just working basketball camp over the summer. And like, that's not going to help you get a nursing job, you know? So I think having them brainstorm and be thinking about 5 years from that point, it's tough because it's so far away and they feel like it's not relevant, you know, but we're getting them ready, I think, for life after basketball. So.
Coach, I agree. As a former D2 athlete, I always say that is something that I appreciated so much. Like our volleyball coach was so into what you just said. We had a book. We read a leadership book each summer, and we had to call in, and we would do call-ins, and we'd have to talk about it. Or during the season, like once a week, we would go over to a house and cook and talk about a leadership topic. And in basketball, we didn't do that. And I'll be the first to say that Ferris, like their volleyball program is always in the top 10, like top 10 consistently for Division II. And basketball, we were not. So I'm a huge advocate of, you need to have like-minded, rounded kids. You need to have not just athletes, you need to have all-rounded kids.
Yeah. And I think some people may say, like, well, now your focus is a little bit off of the basketball side of things from a basketball coach standpoint. But yeah. I think when you're at a smaller institution too, and you're not at this, you know, big caliber university, you just don't have the manpower to do it all. Like you don't have an individual that's working on professional development with your group. Like that's you. You know, I think that was something, you know, as a coach or advice to young coaches, like, don't be afraid. Some of our former players like are just getting into coaching now. And they're like, I'm the assistant coach. I'm the assistant sports information person. I'm the head recruiter. I'm like, that's awesome, because you're getting so many different experiences. And it's not just like, you know, you're strictly a video coordinator, or you are, you know, so you wear a lot of hats. And so that's, I think that's the beauty of coaching. It's the thing that I enjoy the most.
Absolutely. Yes. Literally. That was also something that I never really thought about in the recruiting process of like, what program is going to help me really have that opportunity. And especially going like Division I to Division II, that was something, Division I, that I didn't necessarily get. And I really valued the community service. I really valued networking and being able to even have an internship that wasn't just like a checklist of getting those credits done, but being able to be a student first. I know that's like so overrated, but that was something that I really truly valued. And I think it's vital, definitely, to the future of student athletes for sure.
Coach Quig, another question for you. What would you say is like the outside of winning, what is most important to you? Like what's more important than winning when it comes to your student athletes, your program? Obviously you want to be successful, but how do you measure success outside of winning?
Yeah, I think it's just the family connection, the relationship that you're going to have with these players, with these student athletes once they leave you. You know, you want them to be able to call you up when they need something. You want to be able to call them up to congratulate them on some sort of success. Like, I think that part of things maybe gets overlooked a little bit, you know, and even when we feel like we're doing a great job in that category, you know, and then you have your postseason meetings. And, you know, I had one of our freshmen say like, I just wish you'd talk to me a little bit more. And I'm like, okay, like totally, you know? So I think it's just that everyday, daily interaction and building relationships with them, getting to know them, you know, not just saying, hey, how's it going? It's more like, hey, how are you really doing? You know, like, how are you feeling? How's the transition as a freshman, or a transfer comes? Like, how are you feeling with the experience here? Like, is anything bothering you? You know, like, I think if you ask them those questions, you get to know them a lot more, and you're able to, you know, just be aware of things that might be going on and not just be ignorant to it. You know, I think that's one thing. And maybe that's why there's so many transfers. I don't know. I know that's been obviously a huge point of focus in the NCAA, like how many people are transferring, you know, and like we have transfers too. Like, I'm not saying we haven't had people transfer, but it's just like, I think them feeling comfortable with the communication and knowing, you know, coach really does have her door open all the time. Like, we need to be able to communicate with her and feel comfortable talking with her and the staff, you know, whatever it may be about. yeah, I would say that apart from the basketball and the competitiveness standpoint, I think competing is huge, not just on the court, but competing in the classroom, competing in our relationships. We can't be okay with mediocre, and we can't be okay with like giving up on each other. I think sometimes that occurs where, teammates don't get along and they just give up on each other instead of like trying to work through it. Tough times, adversity. I just remember experiencing a ton of adversity as a former student athlete, and a lot of mine was centered around like basketball playing time, because it was like, okay, I was so ignorant to life, but those relationships, I think with teammates, are just so huge. Like we had lost in the NCAA tournament one spring, and there was like a group of 5 of us that decided we were like going to get in a van and drive down to Florida. Like, and one of our other teammates was like, y'all ain't gonna invite me? And we're like, yeah, we are. And she jumped in and she came with us, so like it was just so funny. Like maybe we had our own little like group that we hung out with, and then this other teammate wanted to come, and we're like, hell yeah, you can come. And it was great. So I think just that communication with each other is huge.
Yeah, I just want to add to that is I feel like this generation too of student athletes is they want to feel heard and valued. And so we always say, like, don't listen to answer, listen to actually hear what they're saying. And so I think it's just so huge for all coaches. And I say that even for administrators is just, it really is relationships. Anything we talk about, the core, it goes back down to a relationship. So I agree 100%.
Yeah. What would you say, how would you measure your success in the administration role? Because you hit on that, obviously that's different than the wins and losses as a coach.
Yeah, we always say bloom where you're planted and add value. So truly success in administration is, it can't always be the title. You can't always seek the title. You can't always, you want a title, but sometimes that doesn't mean that's the best bet for you. So we always talk to our administrators is just be the best you can be. I mean, with COVID, I don't know about y'all, but my family thought like I could move home because I didn't have a job because COVID, because I'm like, no, we're still busy. Like sports, even if you're a coach, there's still so much happening. And I truly just think for all administrators and whatnot is it's truly just being great where you are and adjusting to what you can do, and then continue to advance in your career, whatever that looks like. I mean, it could be just more responsibilities. It could just be, there's so many different ways that look like advancement. It's not just a title. It's not just moving from a different institution. And sometimes you gotta, sometimes you gotta go down to go up. Sometimes if you want to get to this dream job I'm saying this for all the coaches, is sometimes if you know where you want to be, if you know you want to be a D1 coach and you were just a D2 head coach for 7 years, you might have to go be an assistant. You might have to go be, who knows what that could be. And so we always talk to our administrators of, if you know where you want to end, have an end goal in mind, take whatever route you know you can get there. So I think for me, it's just really success is just being the best you. Bloom where you're planted is the easiest way to say it.
That's great. That's a really great phrase that I've never heard that, and it really just resonates for sure. I wrote it down on my notes. But even just you guys are both very passionate, it seems, with diversity and inclusion and things like that. Kara, I know that you were on you were a liaison for the committee with WBCA with that. And Coach Quigley, obviously as a coach, you recruit and have the ability to bring a lot of different people together. If you guys could just really talk about, especially with a lot of the things going on, social injustice and Corona, and just how are you guys facilitating those conversations for the people around you and really creating that safe environment to really be truly inclusive?
And start coaches, I'll even just start with our programming or what we're providing our women right now is we have a Women of Color initiative. So obviously at the WBCA, when the Diversity and Inclusion Committee started, it started when I was there, and it was like a call to membership. Who wants to be a part of this? And I remember we had over 150 applications, and it was incredible. And it was, when I say diversity, it was anything you can imagine. It was like, Black, Hispanic, gay, trans, like we had every representation, divisions, like we had every type of representation you can imagine. And I am not kidding you. I used to cry on all of these calls because it was just so impactful to hear what these individuals had to share. And so the first year was truly just letting people get their feelings out. And then it was like, hey, what's the action? What can we do? So the WBCA, that initiative is incredible. I'm not sure where they're at with it now, but I know that they always continue to try to make sure that they have diverse speakers, that they always have some type of a diversity speaker at convention, and their programming, they always try to implement that as well. But now at Women Leaders is with our Women of Color chat, with what was happening with racial injustice and what continues to, it's just now exposed, more and more exposed, is we just had conversations. We had a Women of Color conversation 2 weeks ago, or a week ago now. And we had a consultant come on, and we had 330 athletic administrators on this call, and people were just speaking out, and they were saying their feelings, but then they were having these conversations. And I think it's just giving a space. So providing the space, not being scared of the conversation, because for so long people, and I mean, being a white female, I'm no longer scared to have the conversation, because we need to be allies, and we need to make this better. Without allyship, we're not going to make a change. And that's what we even talked about on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee at the WBCA. And so with our program this week, we brought a consultant in again. And with these 90 women that are young in their careers, we just had a conversation and let them talk about how they feel with their student athletes. So my piece of advice is provide the space and make sure that with your student athletes, you're making them feel heard and allowing them to have the conversation. Because if you're not allowing it, I really think it's a disservice for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I think we, as a women's basketball program, that was like one of the first things I wanted to do. I wanted to speak with them. I wanted to get them all on a Zoom call. Obviously, it would have been nice to do it in person, but, and I think that's something like in the last few years, I've always told myself, like, I check with our administrators to make sure it's okay. We have this discussion, whether it's kneeling for the national anthem or anything along those lines. But it seems so silly as a coach to ignore these things, or to act like, oh, it doesn't really impact us, or, our team isn't really affected, so we don't have to address it. I think that it's so important, like Kara said, is not being afraid to have these conversations anymore. And one of the first things I said to our group was like, I'm so sorry that we haven't talked about this before. Like, I am so sorry. And that's on me, and I think we just have to be willing to not only talk, but like Kara mentioned, like there's got to be action too. Like we can't have this just be these couple Zoom calls that we had, in June 1 year, and then nothing comes of it and our group doesn't make impact. So that's one thing that our group has been talking a lot about, just how can we impact our own Lewis community, maybe our own personal neighborhood, so it's just brainstorming, and it's figuring out what's going to make the most impact, how we can do that, and having these conversations with our group and not being afraid to have them. So I think it's just the constant conversation, not saying like we have this situation that happened with George Floyd where he was murdered, and we only had these talks because of that. Like we need to have these talks more frequently, and again, have an action plan in mind in terms of what our group wants to accomplish, and at the same time, having them feel comfortable about talking about situations or issues that have impacted them. So I think, it's just about having the conversation and the talks. And obviously when you get back on campus and you're face-to-face and you're able to do more in your own community, be willing to step up and to sacrifice a practice, sacrifice, a Saturday. Like, I think that's going to be something that makes the most impact. Not that our talks don't. I think our talks and our language and our communication is really, really good and positive. I think we had a player a few years ago that wanted to kneel, and I think one of my conversations with her was like, what else do you think you can do? Like, because not that kneeling at, the Lewis game isn't going to make impact, but it's just not, we're not on ESPN. You're not getting the publicity maybe that some other, celebrity players would get. I think, how can you impact things? And then she started to brainstorm, and she was, coming up with more ideas. So yeah, I think action after the talk, action after the conversation, whatever that may be. I know a lot of our student athletes participated in protests. I participated in a protest. So I think those certain actions for them are going to make them feel like things are changing, and they're going to be a part of change and not just be talking about it.
Definitely. And not just talking, but listening. I think that's something that we've definitely, not just with having a women in sports show, but then having, this platform to then now listen to what women in the actual roles are doing and what they're doing with their teams and their coworkers and the women that they're inspiring and really lifting up. So yeah, definitely. That was a great answer. I think we're going to do viewer questions, Ashton.
Yeah, let's go ahead and open up. This is good dialogue. So the first question is from Coach Omega. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Coach.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm honored to just be here and listening and soaking up with you guys. With Coach Quigg, I was just wondering, you're a mom and a wife of 4, and I'm a mom and a wife of 3 babies. And so I was wondering what you thought about the greatest differences between the NAIA level and the D2 level from a head coaching standpoint.
So I think, and obviously this comes into play being a parent too, but they're very similar, I would say, in terms of travel, in terms of the level of play for the most part. And, the biggest difference probably that maybe no one really realizes is scholarship money, and NAI has less scholarship money than Division II, so in most cases. But now I think NAI might be going to one division. So that might become even more equal, I think, on that playing field where it's a little bit closer in terms of scholarship money. But, I think it's very similar. And I think that was maybe me as an NAI coach who just felt like I had to recruit a ton and I had to be this person that was out there so that everyone knew who we were. And so that translated obviously to the Division II level. But yeah, a lot of it's the same amount of time. It's the same amount of, I think, grind. As a coach, I want to be the best possible coach I can be. So, but I also want to be the best mom I can be. So it's bringing my son to the Nike tournament at McCormick Place, and maybe prior to that, I would have stayed for 11 hours and now I'm only going to stay for 5 or 6. And that's just like life, So I think just finding that balance between, the family and, again, wanting to be the best coach I can be, and so whether it's leaving things early or whether it's, arranging practice time around my kid's soccer game or our kids' soccer games, having that luxury, I think, at the NAI and Division II level, you don't get that at every level. Like at the Division I level, you probably can't say like, oh, I'm going to move practice around so that I can be at my kid's game. You have like 5 or 6 other staff members that you have with you as well. And, maybe facility situations and things like that. So, yeah, I've been really lucky, I think, to be at places that understood the parenting aspect and, not having you clock in at 8 a.m. and then clock out at 6 p.m. I think that balance that we find in athletics is something that's really important. And if you're looking to have a family or, be a parent in the future, I think that's got to be a conversation in the interview process or that you're talking to administrators about, like, is this a family type administration, or is it not? I think that's the vibe that you get when you speak to people and you get to know them a little bit throughout the interview process. I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you very much.
Hey, Coach, can I actually, so I have a question about that. Is we always talked about it at the WBCA. Are you a part of Moms in Coaching?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So in that program, Brooke, is Brooke from FSU still the leader?
Florida State. Yep.
Okay. Yes. So she would always talk about, as a head coach, bring your kids or whatnot. But what are your suggestions for an assistant coach or someone that might not be at the helm of a program? Because if they have kids, it's easier for the head coach, hey, I worked in this with my contract or whatnot. So as an assistant coach or someone that's not at the top, what does that look like?
I think it's just like, it's being open and communicating. And I have an assistant coach right now who has a son, his wife's pregnant, going to have another baby soon. So I think it's just like being honest and talking to your head coach about like things that you need to be at, things that you need to be doing from a family standpoint, and being very organized. If your head coach seems like she's not organized, maybe I seem sometimes like I'm not very organized. But I think if you as an assistant coach can be that person that's like, I have a calendar and I know what I'm doing and when I need to be there, and I'm going to let Sam know a week and a half advance, even though Sam probably won't remember the day before. At least I know that I told her and she was aware. And I think that to me makes things more flexible as a head coach, knowing that my assistant coach is so prepared and he's so ready. And, because he might have left a little early one day, he's going to be here tomorrow morning and doing this, or he's going to go to this event 2 days in a row because he couldn't be in the office on a Friday because of doctor's appointments. Like, I think it's that organization standpoint, and not the combative, well, we both have families type mindset. It's more of like, we're going to work together and, be prepared for quick changes, because that's family and that's how it works. If someone hits their head and goes to the ER, like, I got to go, and I know he's got to go, so I think it's just that understanding that, like, while we have this Lewis family that's really important to us, they're like 1 and 1A and 1B. And I think we just try to make it all work. And finding a head coach that's like that. If you have a family or want to have a family, know that that's the case, and, we're not staying after games and watching film till 3 a.m. Like, that's just, I might watch film, but I'm not watching it in the office with my assistant coaches. Like, I'm watching it at home, like
with your kids.
Kids are acting crazy. Yeah. So I think that's the other part of this. Like, not that staying in the office till 3 a.m. and watching film is a bad thing. I'm sure it's very valuable, but yeah, it's just a balance. It's a balance of all of it, and finding that staff or those individuals that like align with what you value. I think that's a really important aspect of it all.
I love the way that you said, just like have, like, not being like, oh, I have a family, you have a family, but like really coming together and like honoring that everybody, we all have families, we all have those priorities. I think even just for your kids to be able to see that, like, not like just your players, but your actual kids to be around that. And I bet they just like, I loved when my coaches brought their kids around. Actually, my head coach and her the daughter was our assistant, so it was just family affair all the time. But Dakota, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, you can do that.
All right, thanks guys for being on. So I'm a NAIA student assistant coach, and my question is, what qualities do you think someone needs in the sport industry to be successful and move their way up?
I'll go first, just from like whole sports industry. I always say grit, resiliency. I think I've had a lot of people in my life tell me like, I don't know, I've heard mixed messages. When I started, they're like, it is so hard to get in the sports industry, is so hard. And I mean, no, you just have to have a good attitude and like stick with it. So I don't want anyone to be discouraged. And so I say truly, it's really just putting your foot on the ground and getting what you want. If you know what you want, go get it. And if someone knocks you down, get back up. And I know that might sound simple, but I feel like a lot of people lack that in the sport industry, and that might be why they don't make it. And so being able to just have grit, I think is a huge piece.
Yeah, for sure. And in addition to that, I think grit and be in a constant state of wanting to grow and to learn and to educate yourself. I think my situation in itself as a career, like, I had to learn and fly at the seat of my pants and like figure it out. But I remember those first couple of years being like, I just don't know the X's and O's like I want to know the X's and O's. Like, I need to learn more from people. So it was clinics, it was, the convention, it was anytime anyone was speaking, I was there, I was listening, I was, so I think that you can't be afraid to like dedicate your time to like educating yourself, and like, even now I'm like on Twitter, like looking at a play, and then I'm sending it to our assistants. I'm like, we should do this like tomorrow at our game. And they're like, we haven't worked on it. I'm like, I don't care. So like, I think that in a sense is like, that's constant learning and educating. And now it's Twitter and it's Instagram and it's Facebook, but 10 years ago it was going to clinics, listening to speakers, learning, calling up a coach. Like, I love that you run this against us. Like, can we talk about it? Or I saw you run this against so-and-so, like, can you send me some stuff on it? Like, I think those interactions and talks have completely grown my coaching. I don't even know if it's my coaching anymore. I feel like it's like everybody else's coaching, but that's how we all are. I think as coaches, we learn, we grow, we like steal things from everyone, and then you have your own values and your own philosophies in itself. But I think you have to be willing to like educate yourself and take the time to do that. And that's time consuming. Like, that's constant interaction. That's constant reading, learning, watching, and that in itself is going to make you a better coach. Not that Netflix isn't great. There's some really great things on Netflix. I watch Netflix a lot, and HBO. Like, I think those are all really great things. But from a career standpoint, like, you have to find, a way to make yourself the best coach you can be. And I think a lot of that is educating yourself.
And don't be afraid. I think that's the thing too. And I'm speaking probably to more women on that. We always talk at our institute. We talk to our women, and women won't apply for a job because they don't make like one requirement. So they check all 9 boxes out of 10, but they don't apply. So don't be afraid. So in the sports industry, if you see something, go after it. And if you don't get it, go after it the next time.
I would just add to that, like, you have to enjoy where you're at and what you're doing. Like, if you're at a position or you're at a place that you don't get along with people, you're not enjoying the camaraderie, like, don't just tell yourself, like, I'm going to go to work every day because people said I have to push through. It's like, you have to enjoy waking up every day, because you don't want to wake up one day and not want to be a coach anymore because of those experiences. Like, you want to have great people around you that are pushing you to be the best you can be. It be a positive atmosphere. I think so often we get told, like, keep at it. And it's like, this is not a good environment for me, So I think don't be afraid to be like, I can find another position. I can do this. I need to reach out to people, to find myself a better situation. I think that's important in our profession, not to get to a point where like you're burnt out.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Burnout is it's definitely the name of the game. And I think I was on a Zoom and it said, or one of the coaches said, like, you usually don't choose yourself to leave the coaching industry. Like, the coaching industry chooses to kind of kick you out or leave you hanging. So that was something I was like, whoa, like, never really thought about that. But we have a few more viewer questions. So Coach Destiny, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, hey, Coach. Hey, Sam.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You're like, you played for me, but you didn't play for me.
Oh, well, maybe
into you constantly.
Were you coaching when I played?
Yeah.
At UAS? You were coaching when you played me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say, I thought so, but I wasn't sure. My question is more so specific to relationship building. And since I went from playing to coaching now, I feel like I can connect on so many levels in that regard. But as far as like a coach, how do you find yourself trying to connect with the different players, their backgrounds, and what, I guess this is a question too for you, Kara, because I'm sure you work with a whole bunch of different people and different personalities and whatnot. But I think right now during these times, especially, it's really important that we're focusing on relationship building. So it's like, what kinds of things do you do on an individual basis in comparison to maybe you're around a whole bunch of people and this is how you build relationships in maybe more of a group setting, but in comparison to what are you doing to make yourself a better coach behind the scenes? And what are you doing to make yourself a better, I guess, employee, for you, Kara? What are you doing in the background?
Yeah, I'll start. I would say from an individual standpoint in talking to players, it's not like overflowing them with communication, because I'm sure that can get annoying if head coach is like always texting me or always calling me about life and what am I doing today? Am I working out? Like, I think that's not even our conversations right now. Our conversations are just like, hey, how's quarantine? Like, going on any trips this summer? Like, how's the family? Like, I think it's just checking on them in this pandemic. They've been at home, with mom and dad, so frequently. And early on, it was like, you couldn't leave the house, So like, I think my initial conversation with all of them was just like, hey, how are you, like, mentally? And some of them like laughed at me. I'm like, because they're, mom and dad now are back, they're juniors or seniors. And they're like, I haven't been living at home like this much. And I can't even tell you how long. So, I think initially it was that conversation, and now it's a little bit more like people can go places to an extent. So it's just about, how are you growing? We read a book every summer. So we have those conversations, I think, about that specific book that we're reading together. And it's about leadership. So it's conversations along those lines. But now with the Zoom meetings and less, they would normally right now be playing like open gym on their own, at Lewis. So like, there's not a lot of like basketball conversation. It's more like, how's life at home? How's the family? Call me if you need anything. It's very, I don't know how to explain it. It's very friendly, in a sense where it's like, we're just trying to make sure that like, we're all on the same page and like, we're still chatting and like seeing each other. Maybe it's on a FaceTime or a Zoom. And so I think that's probably a little bit different than normal. I would normally be like monitoring open gym in my office. And then after open gym concluded, I would go out there and like talk to them and say hi and be face to face, but you just don't have that luxury now. So it's very different. But I think we can't stop this communication. We have to continue to reach out from an individual standpoint, almost more importantly, because I think on these Zoom calls, like we talked about the 7-second silence, there's a lot of 7-second silences, and we might have, I don't know how many calls we've had since the beginning of all of this, 15 to 20. And I bet there's a girl on our team that hasn't said one word, and so like, we have topics for all of our calls. So I try to like message them, a few of them before, like, hey, would love to hear your insight on this topic or on this topic, and some of them are probably caught off guard, like, whoa, she texted me. Now I have to think about this and I have to be ready to speak, so in the group setting, we try to give them a little info prior, but.
Gotcha. Good. Cool. Thanks.
I'll take that from a different route. So I'll look at it from an employee standpoint, like to be a better employee through like communication, as we always say, just managing up. So a lot of you on this call are probably assistant coaches or what that looks like in coaching for you. And it's just like anticipating your coach's needs. And so I think that's a huge thing for any of us to just be a better employee. And then also just to have better relationships in the industry. I think a huge piece that a lot of us always miss is the follow-up, right? So we have the conversation, we then now think that we're good, they're our friends, hey, we're good to go. But it's the continued, relationships take work. It's not just, hey, it's not like right now, Coach Sam and I are going to be best friends. Like, unless I reach back out to her, it's a continued conversation. It's continued relationship for any of us on this call. So just continuing to follow up and to continue to have conversations, I think is really big in this industry.
Yeah. And I think it's like the real talks too. It's not just like, and I know I mentioned this, like, oh, how you doing? Like, how's your family? How's all that? But like pressing, but not pressing to a point where it's like overdoing it. Like if you're aware of something that's going on with an individual or, a family member, I think just not being afraid to be like, hey, like, how's this going? Like, how are you feeling about this? And then kind of letting the conversation go where it may. I think those are the toughest talks, like the ones that are about like the nitty gritty, the drama, the situations with family, with the situations with friends, with teammates. Like, I think those conversations are the toughest because it's hard to get them to say anything about those things, and so finding the right way to communicate that, to discuss that, it gets them ready for the real world, like I said this to our group a million times, like mom can't call me when something goes wrong. When you're in the real world, like you can't have mom call your boss to ask like why he reprimanded you or why she reprimanded you. Like you have to be willing to have those honest conversations when things aren't going right. And I think those are the toughest the toughest discussions to have, the toughest ones to start, you know, like, hey, here's the elephant in the room. You were pissed off at me at practice because I took you out of a drill. Like, let's talk about it. Let's not have it be like, oh, now I hate coach. You know, like, let's figure out, okay, why did I kick you out of the drill? Why did I do this? You know, why did you respond this way? I think those talks they're really tough, you know, but they're so much needed. You know, I mean, this was a great example. End of the year, we had a sophomore that was starting. She had started like 5 games in a row. We decided we were going to start someone else. And we never had that conversation with her. You know, we're in the middle of practice. We're getting ready for the game in 2 days. And we put the starters that are going to start on the starting team. And she just, like, you can see in her eyes, she's like starting to cry. And I'm like, I should have talked to her about this prior, you know? And so, like, I think that's the conversation that, and I'm still learning too. I'm like, okay, I need to be like smarter about that. Why did I just do that without having talked to her, you know? And again, I think it's with certain players and with certain people, you have to be willing to have tough conversations and not being afraid of that.
That's good. Thank you both.
That's a huge, just awareness factor for sure. Just knowing people and disciplining them different and talking to them differently. And like, if that, you know, would have happened to somebody else, I might not have reacted that way. But that's really awesome that you guys are just great. So if Camille, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Yeah, thanks guys, great stuff so far. And both of you have kind of touched on it, but how do you kind of balance like knowing when it's time for you to make the next move in your career versus, you know, you also want to be loyal, and you talked about, you know, having the courage to take chances and apply for jobs, but you know, you don't want to apply for every job. So how do you kind of like know, you know, when are the right moments to kind of make the next jump?
You want to start?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think in some aspects, like, you don't really know when. You know, I think if the right situations present themselves, you know, I think it all kind of depends on, and Kara said this earlier, she said, grow where you're planted, right? Did I say that correctly?
Bloom where you're planted, but grow, same thing.
Bloom where you're planted. So I think that's really important, to be where you are, to be present, and to be all in wherever you're at, you know. But I think we all have goals. We all have aspirations, you know, unless, you know, I'm a 76-year-old coach that's been coaching for 45 years. You know, I probably have done everything I want to do, you know, maybe not won a national championship yet, but I think we all have aspirations and goals in life. I think prioritizing them in terms of what it is you want to achieve, you know, and the route you want to take, but not being afraid to take another route or another direction, you know, and be willing to go. Like, if a situation presents itself, be willing to say, like, this situation is maybe a better situation than the one I'm in, and that's what's going to be important to me. You know, if you have a family involved, obviously that's a conversation with family as well. But yeah, I think again, I think you don't always know when the right time is or what the right situation or fit is going to be, but being willing to jump when it comes, you know, and not being afraid to like pursue something due to loyalty or due to that. You know, I think I literally went to the crosstown rival school, you know, and it was so hard, you know. So I think that's something else, like just being aware of, hey, I have these goals in mind. Your administrator knowing what your goals are and your thoughts are, you know, and it's not just, you know, something out of left field. So if you're an assistant coach, I think letting your head coach know like what your goals are, what your end game is eventually. Like, I think the honesty part of it is really big.
Yeah, and to further on that, I think there's a big difference too with transitions, especially in the sports world with coaching and administrators. Is there's 3 different types of transitions. There's like forced transitions, you lost your job, you got to find a new job. There's choice transitions, you're like, hey, it's time for me to go on. And then there's just like, this is happening transitions. So I think there's just a big difference of knowing when to go. And also you want to go when you have nothing else to learn, right? So when you when there's nothing left to learn, that's time for you to leave. I mean, when I was at the WBCA, you want to work for an employer, you want to work for a head coach or an institution that's like, hey, unless you love it here or where do you want to end up, it's time for you to go. And that's what happened at the WBCA is they were like, Kara, you want to be an administrator? It's time. Like it's time. You're done your time here. You've done your 4 years and go and spread your wings. So I think it's really like a personal point as well as just knowing yourself and knowing what you want. So going back to like knowing your end goal of what you want is you're going to know when it's time to transition, unless it's a forced transition, which does happen, like I said, unfortunately a lot in coaching. But just being able to navigate that, and it just goes back to the communication, relationships. I'm telling you, that's the core of everything is relationships and communication. And if we got that, then I think a whole lot of this is going to be a lot easier for all of us.
Well said, both
Thanks,
of you guys. Great viewer questions. Really enjoyed those. Thank you guys for participating and being intentional with listening. As we move into our overall questions, something we like to ask is, how do you see opportunities moving forward in the future for women in the sports industry, in college athletics, professional athletics, even at the high school level? And how can women really equip themselves to be put in those positions in the future?
Don't be afraid. Go get them. I can see, really do think more and more women, I hope will continue. I know there's been a slow decline in coaching, but I really think if women just continue in their careers, I can see more and more women advancing, because I think there's just this shift that is happening where I feel like we're starting to see it. But I mean, even through COVID, if you look at statistics, the women that are at the helm of institutions are getting, they're looking unreal. They've had plans. It's because they're communicating, because women are great communicators. And so during crisis, women know what to do. And so just continuing, don't be afraid, don't stop, go back to grit. And I can see us, we're going to be in the sports industry for the long haul. That's what I'm going with. We're in it for the long haul. And I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I think you just see more and more women in positions of leadership. I mean, we have Becky Hammond, who's interviewing for NBA head jobs. We have, female governor. We have a female presidential nominee a few years ago. Like, I think that's been a huge thing for women. I think just to see that people can be in leadership positions, and I know Becky Hammond wasn't the first in the NBA, but just her trailblazing that made more and more women feel like they could do it, and be a part of that culture and that organization. So yeah, I think it's just the seeing other leaders, and just following in their footsteps, and and how they did things. So yeah, the second part of your question, Ashton, was about
how can we as women equip ourselves? So, how do we put ourselves in those positions as well?
Yeah. I think it's leading the people that you interact with, on a day-to-day basis. So whether I'm an assistant coach, whether I'm a GA, whether I'm a head coach, if you're Kara and you're working with numerous different individuals, I think just being a leader in that sense of things, because then you become that mentor, that person that we've been talking about, that is in a high leadership standpoint, and leading and learning about leadership. How can you be the best leader, for your program or for your group? I think that's really important, and I know we talk about females in coaching a lot and how we need more females in coaching, but I see a lot of, guys on here, great guys on here. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know, but I think that collaboration, with the male side of things, if we want to grow the women's game, and so many people have said this, I know Muffet touched on it, we need more women in coaching, absolutely, but we need men to like women's basketball, and maybe that's a truth that people don't like to hear, but we need men to want to watch our game. We need them. We need that age group of males that's from 21 to 35 to be invested in what we're doing, you know, because that's the sports world. I think it's that age of individuals and males that need to start being more interested in our game, you know, and in women's sports, not just basketball, but all women's sports. Like, I think if we can somehow reach them, you know, then we're going to take off, and we are taking off already. But I think we can't be ignorant to the fact that, and I've had great men as coaches, Aaron, you know, and Gerald and Bruno and all of them. So like, part of me is like, yeah, I really want women in coaching, but like, here are some great guys that were great coaches for me and great leaders for me and made me the strong woman that I am, you know? So I can't ignore that. I can't ignore the fact that these men love the women's game, you know, and they love leading women, you know, and I think that's a good thing. So again, I think the balance of both of them, of getting more women in coaching and females in women's sports, but giving these guys a little pound. Yeah.
That's great.
That's and same thing. Like, I've always had male coaches. JD literally just signed off, but I'll let him know that you gave him a little shout out. He texted me he was leaving, but it's super important. And I think even we can see it in the military. I've read/studied, but now I'm like finally reading it for enjoyment, this book called Fight Like a Girl, and it's about a like woman in the Marines, and it's just like some women get there and they don't have the ability to extend a hand down to the other ones, but they have the ability to convince the men around them of why they need more women. It wasn't just like a spur, like I was special, like they like that. It's like, you know, it's women are needed in those roles. So definitely. One more kind of question that I had before we just kind of wrap things up, to respect everyone's time, but just kind of what is one thing that you really wish you would have known or prepared better before you entered the position that you currently are in?
You got to go first, Coach, because I don't know.
Okay. I think maybe like, I wish I would have known, and I'm still maybe don't know all that well, how to do it all. You know, like I wish I would have known that like it was going to be really difficult to like be coming home from a trip, and then, you know, we have family, you know, the next morning, and then running to practice that day. And like, I think just the jumbling it all, you know, like I wish maybe I would have been more prepared or more ready, or like had some sort of like transition into that. But it was like, you're pregnant and now you're having kids, you know, and so figure it out. So I think that part, like, just, you know, do I wish I would have had some more experiences as a coach? I think so. Like, I think being a GA, being a video coordinator, being, you know, an assistant coach for a few years would have helped me learn more, you know, but at the same time, I think I learned a lot because I didn't have a choice. You know, like I had to learn, I had to figure it out in order to be successful and help our women be successful. Like I had to do the homework that I was talking about. Like I had to educate myself. Otherwise we would have had negative experiences. So I did everything in my power, I think, to do that, to figure it out, to work with, not being afraid to work with, you know, older individuals that they just know more than I do. They know more shit, you know? So like, I have to like be willing to be like, yeah, I'm a good coach, but like this guy knows a lot, or, you know, this woman knows a lot, you know? And so like not being afraid to like take in that information from other people and not thinking that you know it all. And that's hard. I think that's hard to do as a head coach. Like you are a head coach of a program. Maybe you've been successful, like to take constructive criticism, even from our current players. Like, I think that's been, you know, I tell our seniors in our post-season meetings, like, hey, this is fair game. You can say whatever you want. Like, I want you to know that. I want you to know we need to be better as a staff, as a program. How can we do that? Go. You know, and I think not being afraid to like allow them to do that. Like, I think maybe some coaches wouldn't care, or they just wouldn't be comfortable with anyone speaking their mind, you know? And so being open to people telling you how you can be better.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think for me is how important the little things are, and how they can impact you in your career later on. I just look back to, I mean, even just starting back to D2 SAC, how much that could have helped me propel in my career. But I looked at it and it wasn't serious. I was like, oh, I'm part of the executive team of SAC. Heck no, there are people in this industry that are like, I was the SAC president and they were making changes when they were young. And then when I was at the WBCA in my internship, just how many, the opportunities and the relationships, every time you meet someone, like you are always on an interview. You are always on an interview. Right now you could be on this call and coach could see you and be like, wow, I want her to be my next assistant coach. And so just recognizing all of the little things in life and just recognizing that your life is an interview at any point in your career, which now I'm slowly figuring out, but continuing to do the little things because they matter.
That's good.
Both great. Yeah, great points. So just to finish up, we always like wrapping up with our, like what we call our points of pride. It's something that, you know, just the things that you personally pride yourself on. And we always just want to ask our guests, what's one thing that you try getting out of each day when you're doing your job, whether it's the worst or best day, but something that you can look back on and either like be really proud of or just encourage you going into the next day.
I would say for me, my mantra in life is be the light in the room. So no matter what my day is, or no matter what I'm doing, or it could be the worst day ever, I still always want to make sure I go into a room and I'm going to still be that light. So it could be literally the worst day ever, but when I come home or when I'm talking to my friends, I'm going to make sure that I'm making their day better. And I pride myself on that every day. If I can make one person smile, if I can make one person happy, or just one piece of nugget, I think that's huge. So I have it written on my desk. I have it written in my room, but just be the light in the room.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think mine's really similar. Just changing someone's life, changing something, even if it's in a very small way, even if it's like my 5-year-old, you know, telling him he can't bite somebody, you know, just little stuff like that. I think like being someone that made a change today, you know, and you know, we say this to our team too, like if you look in the mirror today and you don't feel like you've changed for the better or you've changed somebody else's life for the better, like you didn't have a very productive day, you know? And so I think those conversations and those things just give you a plan in mind, you know, whether it's the night before you're thinking about your next day, you know, like how is this going to be a productive day in whatever field or whatever, if I'm a student athlete, if I'm a coach, if I'm an administrator, you know, like how am I going to change somebody else's life tomorrow? Like, I think that's, and we don't have to do it. It doesn't have to be like a monumental change. It just has to be like something small, you know, letting a player know that you're here for her. Call me anytime, you know, something as small as that, you know, your 5-year-old not biting someone. That's probably pretty important for his future. You know, so.
Love those.
Literally, we are trying to get better phrasing for after questions, but sometimes I'm still just like thinking about how great they are.
I have a ton of transition words I can send to you because I facilitate. I'll shoot them in an email. I'm telling you, it's hard.
Absolutely. See, this is
perfect.
Yes.
Yes.
Ashton's like, yes, perfect, definitely. Awesome. Well, if you guys don't mind, if you have any like sort of contact or whatever, Twitter handle, whatever you feel most comfortable, if you want to put it in the chat, that way, like if people have questions or they, you know, tomorrow they're like, oh, I wish I would have, you know, said this, or this really dawned on me about, you know, what Kara said or what Coach Quigley said. So if you guys just don't mind putting something in there, that way people can reach out, and then we just want to say again, thank you so much. This is awesome. It's once again the highlight of my week, definitely.
I think it's been really good to see, like, this is our 8th week, just the growth, but like our guests bring it every single week, and I found this very beneficial. So I'm very thankful. Thank you guys again for taking some time to share your unique perspective on things outside of, you know, coaching, obviously, but off the court as well. So really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us, and thanks for everyone listening. Yeah, Yeah, just amazing.
Yeah, appreciate you. Yeah, this was cool. I had a lot of fun. So it was nice to meet y'all and stay connected. Like I said, I put my cell phone in there and my Twitter. So reach out. I'm here to help anybody, or you can help me too. Who knows? It's
Yes.
mentorship.
Absolutely. That's what we're about here.
All right. See everybody next week. Same time, same place. Well, maybe not same place if you're going to watch it somewhere else, but bye,
Thank
guys.
you, everyone.